So today I'm going to be talking to you about what's happening with recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis in Washington and Colorado. And we're also going to be touching on organic chemistry and the difference between organic chemistry and organic agriculture, because there is a huge problem with this in the community and people are confusing things big time. So to start off with, I'm a writer for three different magazines, the Northwest Leaf, Culture Magazine. Both of those are available in the back. I'm sure a bunch of you have already grabbed them already. I also write for Ladybud Magazine, which is an online publication. All three of those are medical marijuana based. Ladybud also focuses in on other civil interest topics. And I'm also the executive director of Allele Seeds Research, which is a seed breeding company in Seattle, Washington. So a lot of people have been asking me, where can I get solid news from? Where can I get good information from? A good friend of mine over in Seattle works with me at Northwest Leaf. His name is Steve Elliott. You can go to his website. It is Toke Signals, and he provides the most up-to-date information that is available for our community, very sound information, and he is probably one of the most predominant writers in our industry as far as being promoting patients' rights. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening with recreational cannabis in Washington. This was last Tuesday. This was our first recreational store opening, and we had over 1,000 people show up. They were selling 2-gram packages for $40 a piece, and this is only an hour deep after they let people here. So. You can see that the interest in this is very, very large. That's the front of the store. They closed down the street, they let everybody out, and basically just, getting ready. This is just getting prepared for everything. This is Deborah Green. She's the first woman in Washington State to purchase marijuana legally. Made a big deal of it, and she was a very, very nice woman. She's not a very big pot smoker, she said. She likes to just have a couple puffs here and there after dinner once in a while, and she's just really excited to be part of history. So it's really, really, really cool to see a new face to the industry. This is really interesting. This is Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes was the third person to purchase legal marijuana in Washington State. He walked into the dispensary, walked out, held up his marijuana, and said, "I feel good to be legally purchasing marijuana here today." So that's pretty awesome when your city attorney, your acting city attorney, goes in and purchases legal marijuana. That's a major sign that things are going in a good way, good fashion here. We have lots of things like Kush Tours. Kush Tours is a guy here who will do exactly what Tom said and take you around and around to all the different dispensaries. He'll show you what's happening, give you the background information, and you can do. The thing he's holding, the lightsaber there, that's actually a bong made by a local glass artist. It's a dab rig. You can see if I, oh, no, come on. Star Wars medicine, I don't know what you want to call it. So yeah, there's the storefront. We have a lot of regulations, so this is the thing that you're going to probably start looking into with your storefronts, and start looking into other states and their regulations and seeing what they're doing. For instance, our regulations on recreational are limiting the size of their signs and what they can put on their signs. So there cannot be a green leaf, there cannot be any of this other stuff. So this limits the ability to, advertise yourself and do what you need to do. Vivian McPeak, he is the head of Seattle Hemp Fest for the last 16 years, and he is the number 5 person to buy marijuana in Washington State. So that was a big move. If you guys are interested in seeing what's happened, the Seattle Hemp Fest is the largest marijuana event in the world, with over 500,000 people showing up over a 3-day time period. Colorado, storefronts. This is what your storefronts are going to look like. This is what your packaging is going to look like. This is what a seeded plant looks like. You will not see very many pictures of this. Most people in the United States are not interested in male marijuana plants. Most people are not interested in breeding. They're not interested in making seeds. They want a clone. They want clones, clones, clones. Well, there's problems with clones, because when you're taking a clone, you're really messing with the plant's genetics. And we're going to get into that a little bit more later, and I'll tell you why. This is really cool. This is my friend Nick Valdez. He is the executive director of Healing Space Gardens. This is a closed loop butane system. So this is what you would process BHO with. So at the top, the pressurized container holds the butane. Down the middle shaft, you'll see a frozen area with the number 710. That's the term for oil. If you flip 710 upside down, it says oil. So you'll see that number everywhere. The 710 cup, it's just big with concentrates. It's kind of an industry thing. In that area, there's dry ice being held in there. Let's see, you can see the dry ice has liquid alcohol. So isopropyl, 90% alcohol, gets the temperature of the dry ice to a lower temperature and can freeze the center tube, which is where all your material is. And it can get really, really cold, which will help remove all your cannabinoids without bringing a lot of chlorophyll into your end result, which is really nice. So here, the small system, this runs about a 1/4 pound of material at a time. So, you're looking, let's say roughly 100 grams, 10%, 15% of that, you're looking at a 15-gram yield. Again, that depends on the quality of the material you're starting with. This is not alchemy. We cannot turn garbage into gold. It doesn't work like that. You have to start with a high-end product to get a high-end product. And then, of course, having somebody like Nick, who is a master at his profession, always helps. This is the factory where the machines are made, the closed-loop systems. This is a sub-zero extractor machine. This particular 1/4 pound machine costs about $6,000. They're custom made and they take about a week to make. So if you're interested in processing BHO, make sure you have your credit card ready and you plan ahead. Because they come in all different sizes. They range from 1/4 pound, I believe, up to 5 pounds. So the prices also range as you go up too. Again, they're all stainless steel, all custom welded by people who are certified welders, so you're not gonna have any leaks, you're not gonna have any explosions, you're not gonna have any danger associated with it because there are professionals working on your equipment. It's a closed loop extractor. It's made by a company called Sub-Zero Extractors. No, this is a closed loop solvent extraction system. Basically what you're doing is you're blowing the butane gas at a very cold temperature past the material, and it then basically goes through a filter, which is slightly below that, and then into the bottom container there. All the top half is removed, it's depressurized, and you scrape out the interior. After the material is scraped out, it's placed into a purging oven. This is basically slightly crude, but they have newer ovens that are much bigger and hold more capacity. But this is basically a turkey pan with a seal on top and a piece of plastic, PVC, not PVC, but clear plastic. And then there's tubes that run to a pump that vacuum it, and the vacuum purges the rest of the butane that's stuck inside the sample to a higher quality material, so you'll have less parts per million of butane residual in your end product. This is very important for patients who struggle with immunocompromisation. Butane can cause some major problems for some people, depending on who you are. So it's extremely important to know that if you are working with patients, you need to treat them as patients and know that everything that's going inside of them is going to affect them in some way. So this is dabbing, if you are not familiar with what dabbing is. This rig right here is called a mothership. Mothership rigs are, a rig is another name for a bong specifically made for dabbing. Mothership is a company out of Bellingham, Washington. That is about a $5,000 glass bong. Very high-end stuff coming out of Washington. It's attached to what's called an e-nail or an electronic nail. This nail is always on, it's heated, you don't have to use a blowtorch to heat it. Some people are put off by the blowtorch because it reminds them that it kind of look like they're smoking crack. So, not always the best look for other people when they look on. But so this electronic nail is constantly heated. It has a temperature device in the back. You can see the number 774 is a little bit high, but usually we run at about 500 to 700 degrees. Depending on the sample. So every sample is going to change in its consistency. Every sample is going to have a different amount of wax. Every sample is going to have a different amount of constituents altogether. So The temperature in which they're going to vaporize and sublimate is going to be different. But the most important thing to remember during this process is to keep the temperature as low as possible. The higher the temperature, the faster you're going to destroy the terpenes and the cannabinoids and the other beneficial properties of the chemicals that are in there. I think you had a question?
Are you documenting the purity of this, or this process you're doing it to sell?
Correct. So
Do you document that? Do you need to document it?
So in Washington State, you're not. It's not regulated. It's actually the medical marijuana market is the greatest example of the free market system in America. We do not have any regulations at all. The only regulations that we do have is patients can individually carry 1.5 pounds of cannabis at any time without being in major trouble, and they can have up to 15 plants. Those are the majority. I mean, and you're looking at don't smoke it in public, don't smoke in public parks, don't give it to children. Not by state law, but when you go into the dispensaries regulate themselves, and a majority of them do tests. So testing facilities like Analytical 360, there's a slew of other ones. They basically take in products all day long, and that's all they do is test for a range of things. You can have them test, depending on the package you buy, you can have them test for just certain cannabinoids, you can have them test for pesticides, you can have them test for mold, you can have them test for whatever you want. After it's harvested and processed, yes.
But you're not sending it. The dispensary has to do it.
No, it's on the provider. It's either going to be on the provider or the dispensary, depending on how you run your operation. If you feel like you want to provide your patients with the most knowledge possible and you don't mind spending the extra $60, or you can set up a relationship with your local testing facility and say, hey, I'm going to send you 50 batches a week. Let's cut me a deal. You can end up doing something like that. And a lot of these places, some of these dispensaries are actually getting their own gas chromatography machines and all the other machines that do the testing, and they're just hiring somebody in-house to do it because it ends up being cheaper.
If you test one plant from a harvest, will that entire harvest have the same results?
No, in fact, the entire plant will not have the same results. And if you actually take the same bud, cut it in half, and send it to 2 different testing samples, you're going to get 2 different results. You need to think of it almost as like a ballpark range. It's not exact science quite yet. We're not to the point where we have the technology to get that information down, and that's due to the regulations in the United States. We just haven't been able to physically handle marijuana legally and put out paperwork and journals and stuff like that. So we're kind of limited on that aspect. I expect in the next 5 years it's going to get very to the point. So in Washington State, in 3 days, this storefront sold 11 pounds of weed, and that's the only thing they had in there. And they ran out. They no longer have any more. So they have to wait 15 days until they can reload because we're at the beginning of our opening. So the demand is high. Don't let anybody tell you the demand is not high. Here's another better look at how the e-nail works. You can see it's attached to the top there, coming out. That's the direct line to the box. Cooling fins down there. The one thing I can tell you to do, not to do, is don't touch it. People touch it, and it's 700 degrees, and it hurts. It's just, people are used to just smoking bongs, going and grabbing the bowl and pulling it out to clear the chamber. Poor decision. That's all I can say.
Who makes it?
The e-nail? There's a slew of different companies out there. Nails can come in a different grades of variety. They're mostly titanium, and then the titanium is graded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera. And then the other alternative is quartz, and quartz is graded also. Quartz is slightly cheaper because it's one of the most abundant elements on Earth, so it's everywhere. Titanium is a little bit more expensive because it takes a little bit more processing to get it to its state. Then they have to mill it also. So talk a little about plant science here. This leaf is a sativa leaf. You can see it's very thin, elongated. It's also speckly. So what you're looking at here is a massive spider mite infestation. And this is the #1 thing that is going to destroy you. It is going to cause you so much havoc. You're going to be having nightmares about these things, and you're not going to want to have any part of it. So the importance of cleanliness in your garden is super, super important. Every time you step into your garden, you are bringing something from the outside in because you are covered in bacteria. You have little spider mites on you that you cannot even see because they're the size of a pencil tip. So the important thing is when you go into your garden, make sure that you shower, you take your clothes off, and you wear a Tyvek jumpsuit. Or you go in, I actually garden naked, so that way I know that there is nothing coming in with me. It is weird, I get it, but you begin to have build a relationship with your plants. They feel you, you feel them. It's a little weird, but you're gonna like it, and it'll be good. Just don't let your neighbors watch you, that's all. So you get things like integrated pest management. We have frogs, we have praying mantises, are unbelievable beneficial insects at controlling other things. And you're gonna wanna learn more about this because you're working with patients. We cannot be spraying pesticides on plants that we are then giving to patients who are consuming either by smoking or ingesting orally. It's just, we can't do it. It's unethical. So what we're left with is an array of beneficial insects and other things like nematodes and beneficial fungus. When you have healthy plants, it's like having a healthy human being. You can fight off the flu, you can fight off that cold, you can fight off all those other diseases that you get because you have a healthy immune system. Plants have immune systems, and they have the ability to fight. One of the abilities to fight is terpenes, the things that you smell. The wonderful smell that comes from marijuana is an array of different chemicals called terpenes. These chemicals are also deter pests from coming onto your crop. So the healthier your soil or the healthier your plant is, if you're growing in hydroponics, the less likely you are going to have some sort of infestation upon you. This is an outdoor plant in Vancouver, Washington. The gentleman's name is Farmer Tom Lauerman. He runs a major outdoor grow. I think this is Amnesia Haze. It's a very popular sativa strain, and it's huge. It's about 5 feet tall. This is an outdoor grow, and it's just in vegetative state, so it hasn't even started flowering yet, and he said he's got about another month to go until he switches it over. When I was there, you'll see the next picture. Here we go. This is Farmer Tom's, one of his hoop houses. So he is running what's called a scrog method. This method here basically gets you to manipulate the plant in ways that you can get more harvest out of your grow. These are all outdoor plants, and they are all different. Every single one of them is different. I think there's like 2 or 3 that are. The one row on the left, I'm sorry, is Cinex. The whole row is Cinex. It's probably the most popular strain outside of Blue Dream in Washington right now. That's Farmer Tom. Farmer Tom has a fantastic beard. If you see him, tell him he has a fantastic beard. But he is doing something slightly different. He is vertically integrating his system. So he does not just produce marijuana. He also produces lettuce. He also produces green beans. He also produces a slew of other vegetables. He likes to make sure that if one crop fails, there's something there to buffer him. Don't think you're gonna make $1 million off of marijuana because it is very difficult to grow. Anybody can grow pot. Every single one of you can grow pot. But to grow medical grade cannabis is not easy. This is the future of indoor growing right here. These are LED lights. These are the best things that have happened to growers in the last 10 years. You can now tailor the way your plants receive light to however you want it to. So plants do not see light the same way we do. We see light intensity. They see PAR, photoactive radiation. So this different level of ability to see looks weird for us. All the plants look purple, they don't look green, it's very strange, but in the long run, you save 75% on electricity because it's consuming far less. You're saving, I'd say, 90 to 100% on HVAC because there is less heat output, so there's less control. And when you're looking at places like Florida, where you guys are cranking more AC than everywhere else in the country, this is a huge money saver. Now, you're gonna drop the money in the beginning, but it's money, man, it's all money. So here we got clone trays. Just your average, get your clones in there, set them at a certain temperature, certain humidity, usually around 80 degrees, 60% humidity or higher. It really just forces the plants to start to root. And this is really, we're gonna start talking about plant science and getting into the nitty gritty of what is actually going on. So a lot of you probably know about organic agriculture, I'm sure. And some of you might even know about organic chemistry. But the one thing that is different is the word organic. It has two different meanings, and it is extremely important for people to remember this. Organic chemistry is not the same as organic agriculture. Organic chemicals can kill you, not because they're organic and safe for agriculture, but because they are carbon-based compounds. It's extremely important when you read labels of packages, you understand this difference because you could kill yourself. So when we work with products like butane, we're looking at a nonpolar solvent. When we work with other products like MZ16X, which is a refrigerant that has a label that says organic, because it's an organic compound, it is also a refrigerant. It's used to cool refrigerating systems. It also happens to be a nonpolar solvent. Yeah, you could probably purge a lot of it out of there with your purging system, but if you don't, you're giving your patient who's disabled a refrigerant. That's not what we do. That's not medicine. That's not real medicine. So the importance of understanding the difference is huge. What is organic agriculture? We have three different types of agriculture in America. We have conventional ag, organic ag, and we have biotech or GMO. So when we look at conventional agriculture, this was what organic agriculture was before we invented pesticides, before we invented synthetic pesticides, and before we did biotech and GMO. Conventional agriculture was basically just going out there and working your farm. But now we have organic agriculture. Organic agriculture is specific to the United States because it is a specific system that the USDA gives you a permit to apply a sticker to your product. You must meet certain qualifications to do that, and you must be able to pay a certain amount of money to get these qualifications. That being said, the USDA is a federally operated business, a government organization. So you, as a marijuana producer, are never going to be able to get an organic certification, which means you cannot label your product organic until we remove cannabis from Schedule I on a federal level. No federal agency will engage in any sort of distribution of money, any sort of engagement of research or anything unless it's approved by the DEA. And guess what? The DEA is not going to approve anything unless they can make money off of it and put people in prison. So now we have this organic agriculture with a set of standards for regular ag. What is conventional agriculture? Okay, so we're not going to use this subset of certain materials, but we're also not using GMO. So that's what conventional agriculture. You have your general pesticides that you're spraying, the general abilities to control crops. Generally, you're looking at maybe a farm that has a couple crops, 2 or 3 here, 4, 5, 6, 7 crops, something like that. And now we're getting into biotech. Okay, so this is the big, nasty word that everybody hates. Monsanto, Syngenta, Cargill, right? Nobody wants those businesses around. But what a lot of people don't understand is cannabis is a genetically modified organism. You all have been smoking genetically modified cannabis. And I'm going to tell you why. There's 2 reasons why cannabis is genetically modified. The one reason is cannabis is an annual plant. That means it starts its life at the beginning of the year, the springtime, goes through the summer, goes through the fall, it gets pollinated, it produces a seed, it drops its seed, the plant dies. This is an annual plant. It is not supposed to live a 30-year lifespan. When we started growing indoors under artificial lighting, we brought plants in, and we noticed that if you didn't switch the time period to 12-12, the plant always stayed in its vegetative state. It would never die. What do? We take mom plant number 1. Let's take a cut off of it. Cut comes over here. Cut roots, becomes a mother plant. This plant is then pollinated with a male plant. That plant produces seed. That seed grows out to be a male. That male is then back-crossed to the original mother. You've now created a genetically modified organism because that cannot happen in nature. It is not possible for a plant to live through its death. The second way we create genetically modified plants in the cannabis world is by using silver thiosulfate, feminized seeds. When you have a feminized plant, a female plant, and you spray the compound silver thiosulfate on it in a directed area, it will create male flowers, and it will pollinate itself. So therefore, you have a plant that has the exact replica genes of the mother plant. It's not an exact replica, but it's very close. That's been genetically modified by humans. We've been genetically modifying plants since the beginning of agriculture. When you take one plant and you breed it to another plant and you get a specific desired outcome, that's genetically modifying the plant. You're intending a genetic modification. Maybe you want a shorter plant. Maybe you want a taller plant. Maybe you want one that produces more. Maybe you want one that smells really like grapefruits. You're genetically modifying that plant to be different. It's not a wild type. It's not being open pollinated. It's not, you are creating genetically, we've been doing it for millions of years. Now we're able to do it in a laboratory in a such shorter period of time with processes like double haploidy, where we take a female plant, we go into its genome, we separate its genome, and we replicate one side of it. So we take the X, we replicate it, and we end up with another X, an exact copy of the mother. There's no BT, there's no, I guess what it comes down to when you look at what is the danger of genetically modified organisms? Well, if you're implanting genetic material from another organism, transgenics, that's not going to happen in nature, really. But if you overexpress the genetics that the plant already has, or you nullify a certain gene, and you change the way it looks, you're genetically modifying it, but you haven't changed the structure of the code of the plant. All you have done is change the expression levels. You've changed the color of your hair from brown to red via your genetics. Or you've changed the color from a dark brown to a light brown on the expression level of that genetics. So there are a multitude of ways to get to the end result in the same method. So you can have the same plant done organically, and you can have it made in the lab. It can be the same thing. We just need to have a better understanding of the science that supports it. And a lot of that is demonized because of poor PR programs from Monsanto and stuff like that. So when we look at pesticides, what pesticides are going to be allowed for production of cannabis? Washington State has authorized 200 pesticides to be allowed in recreational cannabis production under their PCOL list, which is the pesticides for Washington State. One of these is BT. Many of you might know BT corn. It is the Bacillus thuringiensis. It is a soil-borne bacteria that kills insects from the inside out. It basically starves them to death. So what happens in organic agriculture is BT is approved for organic agriculture. What you do is you go into your field and you spray it on your plants. The insects will eat the BT. It'll go inside of them and they'll starve to death. What Monsanto has done is they've taken that gene and they've put it into the corn plant. And they put it into the cotton plant so that when the bug eats the plant, the protein is produced and the bug itself then dies from the consumption of the plant. This is an interesting thing because this could be introduced into cannabis very, very, very soon. And that's a big problem for some people. Some people do not want that at all into their crops, and I highly respect that. I want to know exactly what's going into my body. I want to know what you're putting into my body if I'm not growing it myself. I am a large supporter of molecular plant science. I'm a big supporter of GMOs. I majored in organic agriculture at Washington State University. I see a need as a person who's been involved in agriculture my entire life. My family owns a 100-acre farm in Michigan. So I see the problems farmers face, and I see the difficulties they need to overcome to make a living, to provide this food to you. And that's what these GMOs are. They're insurance policies for farmers. So now that we've analyzed these two different types of systems for producing GMO seeds, what are we really left with on the organic side? And that's what it's tough to, is we don't have a lot. We don't know what is, what's not. There isn't a lot of genetic testing going on because we literally can't get our hands on the government funding because it's Schedule I substance. We can't get our hands on private investor funding because they're afraid they're going to lose everything because they're tied to a drug business. So our focus in the next year or two is to get the federal government to lift the Schedule I so that we can do the proper research that we need to do to better understand our plant. So let's get to concentrate production because that's the best part of it. Again, I talked to you before about this is not alchemy. We're not taking a crappy product and turning it into gold. You need to start with high quality material. think of it as the same thing as the wine industry. The wine industry is probably the best ability to look at what the marijuana industry is going to look like in the next 10 years. You're going to have your Carlos Rossi. There's going to be jugs of, you're going to have big old, you can buy a pound of weed at Walmart for, $75. It's going to be awesome. Everybody at the party can smoke 10 joints. It'll be great, blah, blah, blah. It's going to taste like trash, and it's not going to get you that high. So that's going to be your Walmart weed, right? Then you're going to have your kind of middle producer range, who's going to be kind of a niche market. They're like, we only produce sativas, or we only produce really heavy indicas. And then you're going to have your mom and pops who are just focusing on really, really high quality, small production, like your Private Reserve or your Robert Mondavi and stuff like that kind of stuff. So when you look at these industries, they're already set up. The whole structure is already there. It's just analyzing marijuana and how does it fit into this different industry. And then the other big problem that we're facing on a scientific level is science needs money. Patients don't have money. That's a problem. Patients need better information. How do we get it to them? Through research. How do we do research? With money. This is a problem. I was born with a genetic liver disorder. It causes wasting syndrome. So I have to consume about an ounce of marijuana a week. It's not cheap. I mean, if outside of Washington State, we're looking at anywhere between $400 and $600 an ounce for high quality medicine, if I'm not growing it myself. In Washington, I can get away with $100 to $250 ounces all day long at a farmer's market. So patients' financial standards, or patients' financial setting is got to be a major player in this role. If you think you're getting into this industry to make $1 million, you're a jerk, because you're taking advantage of sick people. You need to focus on the balance between helping people and providing yourself with enough to take care of your needs. Don't be greedy. When you start talking and seeing people like the Moms for Marijuana, that's when you get out there and you really realize that people are hurting. People are out there and they can't do anything. They can't get out of their beds. They can't walk. They can't talk. All they can do is scream in pain. But you can go to work, and you may have a problem too, but you can do things and help those people. You can be the voice of the voiceless. It's possible. You just have to educate yourself, know what you're talking about, and be confident that this plant is the cure for what you need. So when we talk about concentrates, we're looking at either a solvent or a solventless process. So solvents, a lot of things are solvent. Water is a solvent, but when it comes to cannabinoids, it has an extremely low solvency. So it doesn't absorb very well, and water becomes more of a mechanical mechanism to remove cannabinoids from the plant as opposed to becoming a solvent. So patients who don't want to consume solvents like butane, pentane, hexane, or any of the other sort of solvents that are out there that could possibly be used, butane is the most predominant, patients who are looking for something that's more organic, more natural, or without using petroleum-based products can learn from dry sift hashing or classic methods like Lebanese black hash, or end up doing things like the new methods like bubble hash, which has come out in the last 20 years, which is the water method using bags and sieving. Each one of these methods has a benefit and a negative to it. The benefit to using solvents is you get a huge return rate on your product, because you're basically dissolving the whole product into the material and getting it out. Now, there are benefits and positives. Propane tends to have a better profile for picking up terpenoids, but it doesn't pick up cannabinoids as well as butane does. So when you blend the two of them together in certain ratios, you can actually get a better, higher quality output of your product by understanding what that blend is. And again, that blend's gonna change depending on the product you're using, because there's different product profiles, different cannabinoid profiles in sativas than there are in indicas. And then when you hybridize them, it becomes even different after that. So if you take a sativa that's all the way on the right side, has very high sativa characteristics, and you take an indica, which has a very predominant indica characteristics, and you breed the two of them together, you get what's called hybrid vigor. So you get a plant that takes the best of both worlds and then just amplifies it right in between. Really, really cool stuff. With a solvent list, though, this is a way to produce a high-quality hash without that butane residual or even worrying about any of that kind of stuff in there. The worry with solvent lists using a water method is mold. If you don't properly dry your material at the end, get it really nice and thin, then you're going to end up with a moldy product. And if you have a patient who's allergic to mold, you're going to put them in the hospital or you're going to kill them, and then that's on you. That's not a good thing. Dry stiff hash is the same thing. Dry stiff hash is just basically taking the buds or the leaf and running it over a screen with a piece of glass underneath. Anything that's on that plant, any pesticide, any sort of mold, any mildew, that's going to be in your concentrate at the end. So it's super important to have a high quality of cleanliness throughout your grow and keeping everything legit so that your end product, again, we're not talking about alchemy here, your end product can be that high-end quality product. CO2 gas is another one. It's an inert gas. So it basically just forces itself through the plant material and it takes off the cannabinoids and pushes it through a screen. You also end up getting a lot of lipids, plant fats, and other things in your end product. So it has a slightly different makeup. It looks completely different than BHO. BHO can come in a wide variety. It can come in shatter, which is like a glass transparent looking material. It can come in wax, which looks like crumbly and almost wax-like. It can come in butter, which is basically looks like butter. So the ability to process in different ways is endless. And the ability to get really nice looking products is great, but you want to make sure that your ppm, your residuals are extremely low because we're dealing with patients. So as far as processing goes, on the BHO and the CO2 level, we saw Nick with his machine here running about, this is about $6,000. There are some rubber seals that need to be replaced every so often, and some filters, metal. You can either use metal screen filters or laboratory paper filters. Those are pretty much the biggest things that need to be replaced on it. But again, it's a high-end investment in the beginning, and you can only run a quarter pound. So if you want to drop $20,000 on a BHO machine, and you got to keep buying BHO too to recharge it, there's that. CO2, you're looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000 for a machine. It's a high-pressure system, so it takes a lot of safety in the in construction of it. Let's see, take you out here to another friend of mine, Troy here. He is a cloner, and he basically runs a farm called Permanent Farms. His grow space is, I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe it is less than 500 square feet. Tiny. I think he has something like 12 or 13 strains. I'm not 100% sure. But he, oh, that was the last one. Anyway, he is the one who uses a fully organic method of integrated pest management with the praying mantis, nematodes, and ladybugs. You can buy books that basically have an array of beneficial insects, and they will tell you what each one is good for and how to apply it to your garden. Yeah, so I'm going to be in the breakout room after this. If you have any other questions on plant science or anything deeper on processing and concentrates, please come in there and talk to me and shoot your questions away. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.